Good evening, and welcome to the Duck Vine. My name is Dustin, and I will be your sommelier as we go through many different topics, but this incredible wine journey that we're going to go on through this podcast. Just to bring a little light to who I am, I have been in the food and beverage industry for almost 2 decades now, having experience in fine dining, the wine world, the beer world, a lot of different aspects of restaurants from fine dining to quick service. I've seen a little bit of it all, country clubs. And I just thought it would be a great opportunity for me to bring some of what I've enjoyed and done over the past 20 years or so and maybe make it more approachable, have some fun with it, talk to you guys about it, see what you guys want to learn, and just go on this journey together to find some exciting things that we could all kind of learn from and experience together. Kind of getting into that, this first podcast we're going to have outside of the introduction to myself and what I do is we're going to tackle some wine myths. So, currently in my career, coming from catering and front of house manager, doing a lot of wine purchasing. I also am pursuing my sommelier career through the Court of Masters sommelier. Got my next exam coming up in a few months, so we're getting ready for that. So not only have I been doing it for a long time, I'm actively continuing my education to take myself to the next level and really add more to what I get excited about and hopefully make it exciting for you in an approachable, fun way. Now that we got kind of that background out of the way, so to speak, what can we expect on the podcast? It's a growing and ever-changing process. I have my list of ideas that I want to do, great grape series across the world, just exposure to different regions and educating on why did the French do this or what does it mean when I see this on a label. I will have interviews with other sommeliers as well as winemakers, vineyard owners. We'll do food pairings. We'll do some live shows as well. But one of the biggest things that I want to do and to make this exciting for everybody is I want to hear from you guys as well. So definitely reach out to me on my social media. It's The Duck Vine on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. You can find me around. And tell me what you're hoping to learn. Or, hey, I heard about this or I saw this. Can you tell me more about it? I'd be more than happy to expand on ideas. Like, oh, I really love Chardonnay. What other grapes are there that are similar to Chardonnay but not Chardonnay that I could try that I might like? Or, around holidays, we'll find wines to pair with our events that we'll be having. So stay tuned. Let me know what you guys are excited about, what you want to know more about, and we'll tackle those as we go. So jumping into the wine myths, kind of going to tackle a big one up front. Red wines. Red wines can age. All red wines can age. Don't give me any whites though. That simply just isn't true. What it really comes down to is the structure of the grape. There are certain qualities that the grape needs to have to be able to age it. There's also things when winemakers are producing the wine and then the environment that can help lead to longevity in the aging. But if it's missing some of those key ingredients in the grape itself, you're just not going to be able to age it. Doesn't mean that that particular grape is a lower quality grape. It just means the structure is different. For example, two real big keys in being able to age a wine: tannins and acidity. Tannins is probably the most important part of being able to age a wine. Acidity definitely helps, but it's why you typically, when you hear of a wine that's being opened from the 1800s, it's going to have Cabernet in it, or it's going to have a Nebbiolo grape in it, something that is very tannin structured. For wine to age over decades, it needs those components to help slow oxidation. Oxidation is the enemy when it comes to aging wine. Um, the more the tannin, the slower the wine will oxidize. Acidity also kind of helps give freshness to the wine, makes it not feel like it's getting kind of musty or stale. And believe it or not, acidity does have like an antioxidant effect to it. Um, a lot of times when we are talking about wine, because it is kind of a food product, we relate it to other things. So if you've ever seen people make guacamole, they'll add a lot of lemon juice or lime juice. That acidity helps keep guacamole from turning colors because of it. The other side of that, keep mentioning high acidity. What about like high acidity wines, white wines? Have you thought about aging white wines? Me personally, I had a white blend from Germany not too long ago that was bottled in 1994. The color had definitely turned a little more brown, but it was still perfectly fine to drink. It had um, this almost like sugary raisin flavor to it, but it just had so much acidity from the fruit that they used when they made that wine that it was still um, able to hold up. You know, your Rieslings, your champagnes can age 40, 50 years and be fine. Um, Part of that is when they're fermenting champagne and it's stuck in its bottle the whole time, doesn't really come into contact with oxygen. But in those Rieslings and stuff, you're also getting a lot of acidity into them as well. Um, the other side aspect of this is we don't always correlate these two kind of topics together. But think about your fortified wines. What about those? Those are some of the longest lived wines without any kind of change to them. When you age red wines, the color turns from your reds and your garnets, your rubies, your purples into more dull versions, starting to kind of get hints of brown. If you have any whites that age, they can go from like clear straw color to like a brown. It's not an off-putting brown. It just has this tinge to it. It's almost like it goes and gets a tan. It's been sitting out in the sun too long, kind of a thing. So uh, the other side of that, those fortified wines, like the ports, your sherries, and your high sugar, your dessert wines, those wines can age for an incredibly long time. Not only are they fortified, but they're high in sugar, which helps allow them to age. So you don't have to fall into this aspect of, oh, I've got a red wine. I need to sit on it for 5 or 10, 20 years. There's some grapes that you want to drink right away. The Barbera grape out of Piedmont is a great example. I love that wine with pizza. It's got great acidity, which we kind of talked about, but no tannin structure to it. It matches up great. It's kind of savory. It matches up great with tomato sauces, doughy qualities like your breads or some light pastas, the crust of your pizza. Like it's just going to be a perfect combination. But drink it young. You don't need to wait for it to age. Nebbiolo, on the other hand, also coming out of Piedmont, you definitely want it to age. It's got screaming tannins in it. Nebbiolo is one of my favorite grapes. But unfortunately, that's one that you have to wait on, and that reflects also in its price. High-end Nebbiolos retail, you're going to be starting in the 55 and up range, which kind of stinks because if you're getting one that's already been aged, like from 2015 or so, you're going to be even higher than that. So if you get one right now, but then it still needs to age another couple more years, it's not fun. You know, when I get my wine, I want to drink my wine. Give me some Barbera, it's ready to go. So, moving on to another topic in the wine world. What about chilling wines? All white should be chilled, all red should be room temperature. This is kind of a broad term, but chilling wines is beneficial, definitely helps, but can also bring out or take away certain qualities in a wine you may not like, or maybe you want to see more of it. Um, my mantra through this whole journey has been delicious doesn't need explanation. So if you want to take your wine, throw it in a glass, put some ice in it, and you like it that cold, if that's how you like it, that's how you like it. But when we chill a wine, a lot of times it kind of like calms it down. It takes it and brings it back a little bit. If there's certain things about a wine you'd love to see more of, we warm it up. Especially when I'm doing blind tastings and trying to figure out some of the qualities in whites, I may grab the whole glass and kind of cup my hands around the bottom of it to try to warm it up a little bit to get those whites to release a little bit more aromas and a little more flavor for me. If I'm going out to a pool deck and I'm going to take like a red with me because I do like a red, I'm going to throw it in the fridge for 20-25 minutes. Um, it's perfectly fine to put a red in a chilled environment. Some wines are even better that way. Gamay out of Beaujolais, great to be chilled. Some Pinot Noirs do really well with it. Uh, Even if you have a cab that's kind of out of control, you can chill it for a little bit and tame it back down. You don't have to follow all these rules that have been set up. Now, the other side of that is if you're trying to age a wine, keeping it at a constant temperature helps the wine not stress to be able to hold up against aging better. So if you're looking at it from that aspect, then yes, you do want to keep it in a certain temperature, keep it controlled. You know, good rule of thumb, 55 degrees Fahrenheit is a great temperature to keep wine cellared at, as we would say. Screw caps. Hot topic. Screw caps. I'm not drinking a wine that has a screw cap. It's got to be cheap. It's not true. Screw caps are becoming kind of more prevalent. There's a lot of benefits. You know, there's great things about corks. Corks are natural. They can age with wine, but they do get expensive. They're a limited resource. You have to pull the bark off the tree. You don't cut down the whole tree, but you do have to rip the bark off of it. Um, and it does regrow its own bark. It's a large industry. It employs a lot of people, especially in Portugal. It's a high area for cork making. Like they lead the world in cork making in Portugal. But there's also issues with it. There's quality issues, just like in manufacturing a screw cap. You can have quality issues. You can have it in corks. There's some corks that lower quality they have to add like sawdust and glue to. So at that point, it's not even a natural like purely natural product anymore. Um, Corks on really old wines can also break down over time. So again, if we're trying to age something, screw caps are a little better at that. There's a unique thing, and we're going to talk about this right after this topic. But I'll go ahead and introduce the next myth about tasting wine at a table. A lot of times people assume that's to see if they like the wine. No, that's not what it's about. It's about seeing if your wine is corked. A corked wine presents the smell of like wet cardboard, it old band-aids. It's not vinegar, but it just has this like musty quality to it, and creates some really funky smells. It can be very, very intense. It can be kind of subtle. Once you've had it, you'll know and you'll be able to recognize it. But that doesn't happen with a screw cap. So if you really want to keep your high quality wines to the cleanest, most pristine way available, you would want a screw cap. Now, does that mean everybody in Bordeaux is doing screw caps? No. They're very traditional. They love what they've been doing for thousands of years. They're going to keep on doing it that way. Some wineries are changing, but don't be surprised if you see more and more screw caps on some higher end wines. It does not mean lower quality. So, mentioned in that last little spiel there about corked wine and being at a table. So, When you are at a restaurant and your sommelier or wine steward helps you pick out a wine, and then they bring it over to you to then inspect the label. They pour you a couple ounces, let you smell it, taste it. You're not tasting it to see if you're going to buy it. Once you've made that verbal commitment with the sommelier, yes, this is the wine I picked. Yes, I've confirmed this label is correct. Now, make sure you do that. Just don't trust them because they bring over a bottle that's the right bottle. Always check the vintage, the winemaker, the grape. There's a lot of wineries nowadays that they'll have an Alexander Valley version. They'll have a Napa version. Make sure you're getting the one you want. A year or two in a vintage too can be the difference in $40-$60. So definitely make sure you're double checking. But when they're pouring that, you've already committed to buying it. They've already opened it. It is on the restaurants and a not great thing when a person goes, "Oh, well, I just don't like this wine, take it back." That is not what it's meant to do. It's a very awkward situation for us as the sommelier to be like, "Oh, well, now I have to educate you that that's not what it means." We are in the hospitality industry, so we're more than likely going to be, "All right, how can I help you? What can we do?" In the restaurant, we'll end up eating the cost. But just to be respectful, especially if it's a place you like and are excited to be at, and maybe you frequent them multiple times, if something like this happens, don't send the wine back. You've committed to it. What you are checking for is that corked wine flavor, that the wine smells off, that the wine maybe has a vinegar. It doesn't always have to be corked. You're checking for flaws. If you believe there is one, a great sommelier will take the wine aside, double check it, see if they agree, see if they have another bottle of that same vintage. We can converse with our distributors the next day and say, "Hey, we're having issues with this particular bottle," and we can work it out between us and them at that point. But when a sommelier brings a bottle to the table, it's not to see if you like it, it's to see if there's any flaws in it. And once we've had our glass of wine poured by the sommelier, we do our swirls, we do our sniffs, and you'll notice some people kind of peer through the glass. Maybe they're checking out the color, maybe they're looking for some things, but we've probably all heard this one. "Oh, look at the legs on this wine." Through time, people have, for whatever reason, grasped onto legs or tears being an indicator of quality. Wine legs are not quality. It is a scientific phenomenon, the Gibbs-Marangoni effect, which if you Google that or YouTube it, you can find it. NASA did experiments with this in space, but it's how the wine is evaporating due to a couple of structural things, alcohol and sugar. So high alcoholic wines have a higher density to them. They're going to grip on to that glass, almost like Spider-Man. Whereas your lower alcohol, they just kind of slide down. Same thing with like your sweeter or sugary wines. We can all kind of picture that. If you've had a very sugary drink and it spilled on your hands or something, you just can't get it off. It's the same thing. So it's not an indicator of a high quality wine. It's an indicator of the structure of the wine. When you're blind tasting, you can actually use those as an indicator. Okay, does this have high alcohol or does it have high sugar? If you're seeing that those legs are taking a while to come down the glass there, you have an indicator there, high sugar, especially if it's a white, high sugar. If it's a red, high alcohol. When you swirl the glass, what's actually happening is the alcohol is essentially evaporating and releasing a lot of the wine aromas that you be searching for on your nose palate. That's why you look first, swirl, and then sniff. You're releasing those. It's interesting too. I saw this on I think it was a YouTube video. but they were showing on a microscopic level the difference between a glass wine glass and a crystal wine glass, because crystal actually has more peaks and valleys on a microscopic level, and there is some belief that that's why a lot of people will prefer a crystal glass over a glass, because that rougher texture will allow more stimulation for the wine to release more aromas. You're talking very minute. I don't know if you could smell a wine and be like, oh, this is a crystal glass and that's a glass. But some people feel that way. And it also leads people to kind of get a little particular about their glasses, as we probably have all seen at some point. And what I'm talking about is wine glass shapes, including stem or stemless. I did a really neat thing with a crystal manufacturer named Riedel, where they have created all these different shapes. You need to look them up. They produce phenomenal drinkware, but they produced all these different shapes. And if you get to do a tasting with them, they'll give you a wine, and then they'll give you just your bog standard wine glass you'll see at every restaurant. And then they'll give you all these funky looking glasses. And it's really neat. You'll put it in their glass that matches that particular variety, whether it's a huge bowl or a really tall, skinny glass, or a shorter, fatter one, or maybe it has this kind of tulip look to it. And they'll tell you stuff like, oh, this big bowl allows the aromas to collect and kind of stay there. So when you put your nose in, you can get it. Or this one with this kind of lip on it allows the wine to get all the way to the back of your tongue to hit this specific spot to really get to taste these notes that you're looking for in this varietal. If you put a different kind of wine in this, it'll make your wine smell offensive or da da da. And it is neat. You can see the science working there, and there's definitely something to it. But the guy that I was doing it with brought out a stack of red Solo cups as well. And we all poured a wine into a red Solo cup and drank it. And it was just as good as some of the glassware. Not all of it. You could definitely tell that there was a difference. But at the end of the day, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, delicious doesn't need explanation. If you like your pretty fancy stemless glass, go for it. If you got kids running around, heck yeah, pull out that stemless. Put in the stainless steel ones with a lid on it. I got a 6-year-old. I get it. It doesn't take anything away from the wine. I think there's some scenarios where the glassware can enhance it, but I don't see it taking anything away. Enjoy your wine the way you can, including alternative packaging methods. We're getting ready to hit the summer. Who wants to drink a nice glass of wine by the pool? How many places say no glass by the pool? There's so many alternatives nowadays to allow packaging in so many different formats so we can enjoy our wine when and where we want. There's this thing in the business called BIB, B-I-B, bag and box. It's these high food quality grade plastics that will come like your Franzios, or technically bag in the box. The Coke or the soda you drink at restaurants is bag in the box. So if we're going to drink a soda all the time and we all think it's tasty, why can't we find out a wine being tasty out of a bag in a box? There's countless different kind of formats now that allow you to drink your wine the way that you want. They got pouches, cartons, plastic bottles. They do this thing now, like a paper bottle that is like a bag and box that's shaped into a wine bottle that has a screw top. They put it in cartons, cans. Well, that's an interesting one, because we all know metal really has an influence on food. A lot of your wine cans that you get are lined with either like a food grade plastic or some kind of a protective lacquer that helps prevent any kind of transfer from that metal into your wine. Um, they're not putting their wines into vessels that are going to taint it, that makes you not want to buy it again. It's okay to try addition or alternative packaging. Um, Topless Creek even went through that at the last couple years. They put out a rosé in 2021. It was 3 liter bag and box that were selling for about $100 a piece. They sold out of them in less than 4 hours. The feedback was phenomenal. It's fun to show off. It's fun to see like what's coming up next. But we also have to figure out ways to be sustainable. We have to figure out ways to help, as wine has become such a global market, that we can have our quality wines without having to worry about them being jeopardized in shipment from one place to the other. So don't be afraid of trying wine if it comes in something a little different. And then I think the way I would like to end off this one is one that I've heard more and more being around the table strictly in a wine setting. Through my career, I've been all over the floor, I've been all over the restaurants, but really now I'm focusing and kind of honing in more with tableside wine service. In my current position as a som, I am going through with our wine club members, and they get to try 5 wines with me, and we talk about either the winery or the grape or something exciting with whatever could be going on there. They pick a couple of the bottles that's included in their membership fee, and they take those home. But I've heard some people kind of like, oh, well, I'm going to go with this because it's a single varietal, so it's definitely a nicer wine. Or, oh, I don't want the blend. Blends are inferior. They have to make up for something. While that's true that they're kind of like blends are being used because something's missing, it doesn't make them inferior. But it also doesn't make single varietals inferior either. What's going on here is winemakers' choices. It can also be location driven. For example, Bordeaux. Almost all of your Bordeaux wines are blends in some format. So your most famous wines in the world, the ones that are bringing the biggest dollars at auction, the ones that are the most collectible, are blends. Now you go over a little more inland, a little bit more north, and you hit Burgundy. Burgundy can really only have, by French wine law, and we'll talk about that in a future podcast, they can really only have a couple of grapes there, and it makes them be presented in a single format, primarily Pinot Noir. So 2 areas very well known, one very famous for a single varietal, the other being extremely famous for complete blends. It doesn't make one better or less than the other. When you look at America, California, as an example for a blend or single varietal, a lot of times there's laws that allow kind of, not that anybody's trying to like misskew you or take you down on a path of misinformation, but there's wiggle rooms into it. So a lot of times when you get a single varietal, it is often a blend too. It just may not be the same extent as a wine that's like a claret that is just going to be a obvious blend. For example, in the U.S., if you put a single varietal grape, like if I made a wine and said this is Cab Sauv, 75% of it has to be Cab Sauv. Not 100, but 75. So I could do 75 Cab, 15 Merlot, and 10 Syrah, which that is also a very common Bordeaux blend, maybe sometimes in different ratios there. But those 3 grapes are a very common blend. So it doesn't always mean like when you're getting your single varietal that it's truly a single varietal. Our landscape, the topography, the terroir, which is an interesting word we'll get to when we get to the French side. So definitely hang out if you want to find out what terroir is. It's a cliffhanger. But it's an interesting word because it doesn't even have an English translation. It's just French. But those can influence the wine. For example, in our wine club, we have a let me back up there. We have a Washington cab right now. Cabs, when we think about them growing in North America, specifically the United States, we typically don't think Washington. We think California. When we think Washington, we think Pinot Noirs. It's a little cold. It's a little further north. Where this particular winery is even further north than Bordeaux. You're getting more in those Burgundy kind of parallels. So they have to choose to do some techniques with some blending to kind of round out that flavor. They're adding some additional grapes so you don't feel like you just have a bland wine. So blends are not inferior, and even when you get a single varietal, sometimes it can have just a little bit of something else. I've seen a wine, it was 95% Cab, 2% Syrah, 3% Merlot. And you would think, what's even the point of that? But sometimes just a little bit goes a long way. I hope you've enjoyed our talk this evening. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me. Hope you had some fun. Hopefully you learned something. But the most important thing is we got to drink some wine. Stay tuned to hear future podcast. There will be released weekly. Please check out our social media, the Duck Vine, on Instagram, on Twitter. Please reach out. Let me know what you guys think and what topics you'd be excited to see in the future. Can't wait to see you guys soon. Have a wonderful evening.